A public gathering of unity at Whittemore Park to fight disunity. 1 year after rioters staged an attack on the U.S. Capitol protesting the legitimacy of the 2020 presidential election, demonstrators in Arlington demand the promise of an all-inclusive democracy. We have a report. Arlington is about to celebrate the life and timeless works of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. ACMi News has a preview as we talk to this year's keynote speaker. More than 2 centuries later, the Jason Russell House is still revealing its secrets about a bloody April day back in 1775. We go inside the house to examine what has been uncovered, and we take a look at what the town's historical society is doing to tell this fascinating story. And for a few precious minutes, the skies of Arlington became a heavenly canvas as the sun set on the first workday of 2022. A good omen? We sure could use it. ACMi News starts right now.
From McLennan Park to Spy Pond, from Poets Corner to the Mystic River, we have Arlington covered. We're your neighbors, a friend you can turn to, giving you stories that count from people who care. Dedicated, determined, dependable. This is ACMi News.
A vigil in remembrance of the insurrection that occurred 1 year ago at the nation's capital was held at Whittemore Park Thursday night, January 6th. Hello and thanks for joining us. I'm Anim Osmani.
And I'm James Milan. This event was unanimously approved by the Select Board at its December 20th meeting. You'll recall that the U.S. Capitol attack took place on January 6th, 2021, in an attempt to overturn the results of a legitimate U.S. presidential election.
ACMi's news director Jeff Barnes was there to cover the vigil, which marks a dark day in American politics.
This vigil is being held 1 year to the date when thousands of Donald Trump supporters gathered January 6, 2021 near the U.S. Capitol building and the White House, asserting that President Trump had been cheated out of a victory in the presidential election. Rioters marched by elected officials' windows, breaking glass and making their way through the government buildings as police attempted to stop any further damage. The FBI continues to arrest, and federal district courts continue to adjudicate cases against those found to have violated laws related to the Capitol riot. Meantime, demonstrators here in Arlington, and indeed the nation, are urging Congress and President Joe Biden to create preventative measures through federal legislation guaranteeing and protecting the people's right to vote.
January 6th insurrection last year was not the beginning or the end of efforts to undermine democracy in the United States. It's been going on for years and it's getting more and more severe. Right now, there are legislators in 30 states that are passing bills that make it more difficult to vote and make it easier for local officials to overturn the results of elections.
So that we can make this a mass protest around the country. We need people in the street every day, as big as Black Lives Matter. We need to be on Joe Manchin's front lawn. We need to be everywhere. And now is the time to do it. We can't wait any longer.
Yeah, really the threats to democracy are not over. There are so many of them. So many states are doing things, enacting new laws to disenfranchise people. On the basis of race and party, and trying to control the election process, electing secretaries of state that are partisan, local election officials that are partisan. So there are so many things going on right now, so many attacks to our democracy. I think it's really essential for the people to kind of stand up and say we value our democracy and we want to make sure that elections are held fairly and that the results are respected.
Those people attending tonight say this unsettling chapter in our political history should serve as a cautious reminder that we can prevent another attack like we saw last year on January the 6th, and realize the promise of democracy for every American voter, no matter what color, zip code, or income. That way, everyone has an equal say in the critical decisions that shape our daily lives and indeed our futures. For ACMi News, I'm Jeff Barnes.
Now, an update on the COVID crisis in Arlington. Health and Human Services offered the so-called Binax Now rapid antigen testing on January 5th and 6th at Town Hall. Binax Now is a self-test which has been in high demand driven by holiday gatherings and the highly contagious Omicron variant. The tests apply to symptomatic individuals or those who were exposed to COVID-19. The latest numbers released this week show a little over 3,200 total COVID cases in town since the outbreak of the pandemic. The Arlington Health Department will be hosting Moderna COVID-19 booster clinics on 3 Thursdays in January, January 6th, 13th, and 20th, from 3 to 6 p.m. at Arlington Town Hall. Registration is required. For the latest information on COVID-19 in Arlington and how you can protect yourself and your loved ones, just go to the town website, arlingtonma.gov.
Town Manager Adam Chapdelain's new 3-year contract was unanimously approved by the Select Board at its meeting just before the Christmas holiday. Chapdelain's new contract includes an annual base salary of $233,000. It provides for no separate housing allowance, and longevity is rolled into the annual salary. Under Mr. Chapdelain's current contract, his salary is just over $214,000, and his housing allowance is $24,000. Board members praised the town manager for his work throughout the years, especially since COVID-19 entered the picture 2 years ago.
Having worked closely with Adam this past year, in particular as the chair, I see the value that he brings to the community and the great job that he does, and also see the great challenges that we have ahead fiscally with the potential for an override in a couple of years and other challenges. And I know he's up to that task, and so I'm thrilled that he will be joining us.
You're right that being a town manager really anywhere is a tough job. It's a tough job in good times, never mind in challenging times like we've all been facing. But at the end of the day, doing such a tough job in Arlington is the best you can get. And that's predominantly because Arlington is powered by amazing people. And it doesn't mean that any of us always agree on things, whether it be the manager of the board or residents, but ultimately this is a community that is powered by people that care about the community and want to advance things. And if you can have that as a starting point, you're in a good position. So I'm very excited to be able to sign this contract with the board and continue to serve the town. I'm very thankful for the consideration that you've given me, and I look forward to meeting all the challenges that we have ahead. So thank you very much.
This approval comes just a few weeks after it was leaked that Adam Chapdelain was reportedly in talks with Fall River's mayor regarding an open position there. Chapdelain told ACMi News he is committed to Arlington and has no plans to leave.
3 residents who are neighbors of the Mugar site near Route 2 in East Arlington filed a lawsuit in Middlesex Superior Court just before the new year. They're naming Arlington's Zoning Board of Appeals and the Boston Corporation seeking to build housing on the site as defendants. The corporation is owned by the Mugar family and applied nearly 6 years ago for the comprehensive permit, which was issued after the ZBA approved it last month. The lawsuit asked the court to annul the ZBA's decision and award the plaintiffs their costs, including attorney's fees. This concerns a 17-plus acre tract next to Route 2 whose access is restricted by wetlands. In all, 124 units would be built, of which a percentage would be affordable to low and moderate income families. The suit claims nearly 14 acres of this tract are within regulatory floodplain under federal regulations. No word on who will represent the ZBA. Court documents showed the deadlines for litigants' responses to the complaint is April 22 of this year.
The town's redevelopment board closed its hearing December 20th regarding the property at 833 Mass Ave, known as the Atwood House, but not before a back and forth between the developer's attorney and the Town Historical Commission. Robert Anise, the attorney for the homeowner, says he filed a demolition application for the property. According to Your Arlington, board members want the owner to comply with the Historical Commission because the demolition work was started last July without a permit. Area historians have long said the Dr. Charles Atwood House is significant for Arlington and has always been important to the historical character of Mass Ave.
I, quite frankly, am tired of being a volleyball, and I am not going to be a volleyball any longer. The only way for that to stop happening is for me to say to everyone at both boards at this point that we will pursue the demo app, because otherwise I go back before historical and they keep telling me I have to continue with restoring the exterior of the building. I go before the ARB, and you folks tell me you want the building to come down. Well, quite frankly, my client's preference would be that the building come down, and we construct a new building out fronting on Massachusetts Avenue.
During the open forum, Commission members expressed their support for keeping the house. According to Your Arlington, the two boards plan to work together to try to resolve the matter.
Wondering what to do with your Christmas tree now that the needles are falling off faster than Charlie Brown's? This is never an easy sight to see. Crews were supposed to pick up trees for recycling the week of January 3rd, but due to staff shortages from COVID-19, Christmas tree collection will start running the week of January 10th. Town leaders say if you put your tree out on the curb before January 10th, please take it back if you are able. A one-day drop-off is scheduled on Saturday morning, January 15th, for Arlington residents only. Please make sure all decorations are off your tree. Why? Because chippers are allergic to garland and tinsel.
You would think that after nearly 300 years, all secrets would be revealed at Arlington's Jason Russell House. But an ongoing investigation recently by historians and ballistics professionals shows there is so much more to this historic site, namely newly discovered bullet holes, which are a testament to the bloody carnage that took place at the Russell House on April 19, 1775. ACMi's news director Jeff Barnt goes inside the Russell House, which played a major part on the first day of the Revolutionary War.
April 19, 1775. The Revolutionary War begins after the shot heard round the world at the Old North Bridge. Facing more firepower from the provincial militia than anticipated, British soldiers, redcoats, leave Concord and begin their slow retreat back to the relative safety of Boston via Cambridge. The fatigued main column of redcoats would pass near the Jason Russell House in what was then known as the village of Menominee, modern-day Arlington. Russell himself, a fairly prosperous 58-year-old farmer, was returning home after secreting his family to safety at a nearby farm.
We have the story of his neighbor coming over and telling him that you should take refuge with the women and children who were going up the hill to today's Belmont. What was happening was that news that was spread by Paul Revere and William Dawes was starting to spread to the more outlying areas, places like Danvers and Salem and along the South Shore. And so all of these people were showing up to fight wherever the fight was happening. And it was getting more and more intense the further toward Cambridge they were going.
It was about 5 p.m. on the 19th of April when the British were passing by these very grounds. Now, waiting for the redcoats on this property, behind thick brush, hastily constructed breastworks, stone walls, and trees, were members of the American militia and the Minutemen, who had poured in earlier that day from surrounding communities like Danvers, Beverly, and Salem. The men focused their attention on the approaching main column of British troops marching along the old Concord Road, now Massachusetts Avenue. When the redcoats were close enough, the rebels then opened fire. Suddenly, the exhausted British soldiers became enraged. Musket fire and heavy smoke swiftly enveloped these grounds, erupting into boundless carnage. 7 men from Danvers were killed in the front yard. 2 were seriously wounded. 1 was taken prisoner. In a frenzied search for cover, some militiamen managed to scurry inside the Jason Russell House.
They just showed up here and they sought refuge in the house. They did some fighting. They were probably shooting from outside windows and trying to hide as they could.
In the midst of outright chaos, Jason Russell himself tried seeking refuge in his home, but he would never make it. He had a lame leg, moved too slow, and was shot twice as he reached the front door. He was then bayoneted 11 times by resolute British infantrymen, following the rebel soldiers who managed to make it inside the house. For the ensuing minutes, this home became a slaughterhouse. The intense barrage of musket fire, billowing smoke and screams overwhelmed this home. Outside, British infantrymen continually peppered the Russell House with musket fire. The musket balls penetrating walls, windows, and ceilings. In this kitchen, a redcoat tried opening the cellar door and was immediately shot to death by one of the Danvers Minutemen hiding in the floor below. British regulars would then storm the parlor on the first floor, the bloody staircase, the 2 chambers on the second floor, and finally, the attic.
And there's some record of the most intense fighting happening in the upper rooms, which is an interesting fact.
Although the Minutemen put up a furious fight, there was no exit. They were quickly overcome with point-blank British firepower and summarily bayoneted. When the brutal firefight finally subsided and the smoke cleared, the British then ransacked the Russell House and quickly left for Boston. Historians say a total of 12 Americans and 2 redcoats were killed inside the home.
It was such chaos that we know how many people died in the house, but however many flooded in, we have no concept. And we've seen different kinds of, a lot of what we go by is oral history, just because nobody thought to write at the time. But we have somebody who went and interviewed a lot of the children and grandchildren of the participants, and that's one of the best sources that we have for what happened that day.
Jason's wife, Elizabeth, returned to the house to find her husband dead. Jason Russell and other fallen Americans, their bodies riddled with musket balls, torn apart by British bayonets, were laid out like cordwood on the kitchen floor, blood from their fatal wounds forming a grotesque pool in the room. Elizabeth was reported to have said, "The blood in the room was almost ankle deep." Today, a 19-foot white marble obelisk serves as the final resting place for Jason Russell and others who gave their lives to breathe new life into what would become a new nation. Nearly 250 years later, new and exciting clues continue to emerge throughout the home, attesting to the brutality of that awful day. Just 2 years ago, a team of archaeologists and historians conducted a ballistic study in the Jason Russell house. Within minutes, they were finding several musket ball holes that have been overlooked for well over 2 centuries. Within 10 minutes of their arrival, they discovered a musket hole on the dark side of the door jamb leading to the Russell cellar. More holes were found in the first floor parlor, the staircase, and the attic. The trajectory of many strikes points to the exterior Mass Ave wall just below the first floor parlor window, likely fired by British regulars outside, targeting provincials pouring gunfire from the inside.
And then we're finding the new information that comes from this study that is taking part. I think very few, I don't know if they found additional bullet holes at any of the other sites, but this one, we're already well known for the bullet holes, and then to have found additional ones is pretty remarkable.
As word of the Jason Russell House continues to gain in popularity and status among history buffs, centuries later, it is still revealing its guarded secrets and attesting to the tenacity of those people who lived and ultimately died here. For ACMi News, I'm Jeff Barn.
You can take an online tour of the Russell House anytime. Just go to the website arlingtonhistorical.org.
In the past 2 years during this COVID crisis, Arlington's Historical Society has received several grants to help tell this extraordinary story at the Russell House. Shelves and shelves of artifacts, some centuries old, crowd the adjacent Smith's Museum on the property. During this pandemic, Arlington Historical Society staff members and volunteers have had the time to catalog thousands of these items, some of which will be on display in the future. Sarah Lundberg tells us that because of the COVID crisis, staff members have a chance to update artifacts in their possession and to apply for several grants that will help solidify this home's place in history.
Yeah, that's one thing we noticed that, especially last summer, we got a huge uptick in our traffic to our website, and a lot of people kind of seem to be exploring their own area. They're not really wanting to travel, and so we want to be responsive to that. And then as far as the grants go, it's just a lot of that kind of programming that we work on. It was unfortunate that we had to cancel all of our in-person programming, but we took that time to write a series of grants, and then we were thinking that maybe we would get awarded 1 or 2 of them, and we've had a 100% track record. We've been awarded every grant we applied for, so it's been pretty remarkable. It makes for a busy winter, but hopefully a good opening this spring.
Just months ago, the Historical Society was awarded nearly $40,000 from the Institute of Museum Library Services to digitize and rehouse more than 1,300 objects in its collection. The project includes complete removal, inventory, and the installation of new shelving. You may recall money has also been set aside to drill a series of wells on the property for a geothermal heating and cooling system. These projects should be complete in the next few months, with a new exhibition set to be opened in the spring.
January 15th, 2022 would have been Dr. Martin Luther King's 93rd birthday. To celebrate this occasion and to honor this legendary and steadfast champion of civil rights, Arlington will be staging an event that highlights Dr. King's unforgettable legacy on January the 17th. This year's 34th annual Martin Luther King birthday observance will be held virtually, and because of COVID restrictions, broadcast on ACMi.tv. This year's keynote address will be delivered by Dr. Lynn Perry Wooten, the 9th president of Simmons University in Boston, and accompanied by renowned jazz musician Paul White. ACMi's news director Jeff Barn had a chance to talk to Dr. Wooten about the significance of Dr. King's birthday, especially in these times of racial injustice and political turmoil.
What can we expect you to say in these very contentious times on so many levels?
Jeff, I've spent the majority of my career looking at topics related to diversity, equity, inclusion, and social justice. And if you research those topics, you have to think about Dr. King. Fast forward to my current life as president of Simmons University in the middle of a pandemic, and that's what you asked about. And I'm saying, what would Dr. King be saying today about the world? And my speech is talks about his drum major speech and how each of us can show up to be everyday leaders, no matter where we are and who we are in our position in life. And so as I think about the social reckoning and the pandemic and climate change, I'm asking, what does everyday leadership look like? Mm-hmm. Well, one, we have to know what our strengths are. Dr. King knew what his strengths were and lived those strengths, everything from community organizing to being an intellect to giving extraordinary speeches. But the other thing I've been thinking a lot about in my own research and leading Simmons is Dr. King surrounded himself with brilliant people. Leadership is not a solo journey. And oftentimes people think of Dr. King as this iconic person, but there were lots of everyday leadership and leaders that made the civil rights movement so successful.
Does it bother you to think that just last year, for instance, now the statues are coming down in Richmond, Liberty Lee, the Confederate statues, many of which were erected 30 years after the end of the Civil War. Does it bother you to see the Confederate flag in Mississippi's flag? They just changed it just last year. We have a long way to go.
We still have a long way to go. And it does bother me. Like I said, I'm an older generation or Xer. I'm 55. I've lived racism all my life. So it is part of my life story. And so I get upset about it, but every time I see progress, I celebrate. And that's what we have to do.
You can watch live at acmi.tv/publive at 7:30 p.m. on January 17th, or on the public channels, RCN 629, Verizon 31, Comcast 8. The event will also be streamed on the Arlington Human Rights Commission's Facebook page.
What's happening with Arlington High students this week? We return to our Studio B at Arlington High School for this week's Ponderscope with Veronica Barden.
Hi, and welcome back to the Ponderscope, your Arlington High School news, updates, and more. The literary magazine is still accepting submissions. If you're interested in having your artwork or writing published, you can ask your English teacher for the submission form link. The deadline for submissions is January 7th, so make sure to act soon. The music technology class will be having their Sonic Voyages concert on January 13th at 7 p.m. The concert is all remote and will be streaming live on ACMi TV's YouTube channel. If you are interested in attending the concert, be sure to check the live broadcast. Wilson Farm will be sponsoring a Shop at Wilson Farm Day for Arlington High School on January 31st. 20% of your purchases will be donated back to Arlington High School. If you're interested, check the daily post on the Arlington High School website for more information. That's all for this week's edition of the Ponderscope. Thanks for watching, and Happy New Year.
Thanks, Veronica. And that'll do it for this week. Thanks so much for joining us tonight. I'm Animo Osmani.
And I'm James Milan. We leave you with a spectacular sunset right outside our front door on Monday, January 3rd. We hope you enjoy this colorful light show that took place in the clear, crisp skies over Arlington and that virtually no earthly medium can match. Good night.
And Happy New Year from all of us here at ACMi.
You can always check out our latest segments and newscasts on the web at acmi.tv/news. And don't forget to like us on Facebook and follow us on Twitter and Instagram at ACMi News. Make sure to subscribe to our YouTube channel as well. You'll find us at youtube.com/ACMi News. If you have any news tips for us or wish to become a citizen journalist, we'd love to hear from you. Email us at news@acmi.tv or stop by ACMI Studio A at 85 Park Avenue.